Hello, welcome back, Social 20. So, what we have covered so far is we've looked at what the definition of nationalism is, and then we started to look at the understandings of different nations. And what we're going to look at today is a different type of a nation, and this one is really the most important one for the course. So, we're going to look at what is called civic nationalism and what a civic nation is, and then we're going to try to understand how this is related to Canada and what the understandings of civic nation are. So what kind of a nation is Canada? Do we all share the same geography? We looked at what a geographic nation is in the last class. We certainly can say no. We're one of the largest geographic nations in the world, and we have all kinds of different geography. We've got beaches and forests, and we've got mountains, and we've got prairies. And so within that, we are not really united by our geography. We have a very clear sense of division between the East Coast and, let's say, in the interior of the country that just doesn't seem to bond us so much. So we can't really define ourselves purely by our geography. Are we a political nation? Well, no, we have a strong sense of political processes in our country, but we don't all share the same politics. We don't all have the same views. And so we are not really defined as a political nation. Are we a linguistic nation? Do we all speak the exact same language here in Canada? That's a no. I'm sure you can walk out your front door and hear 5 to 10 different languages within minutes. And so we don't define ourselves linguistically. Culturally, we are definitely very multicultural here. We are defined almost by how multicultural we are, but we couldn't say that we all share the same culture here. So what are we? It leaves this gap in trying to define where we are as a nation. So we don't fit into the box of any of the understandings of nation that we looked at last class. So what we are is this term called a civic nation. Canada is what we call a civic nation. Understanding what a civic nation is really important to this course because a lot of the different understandings of nation are going to be compared back to this. And when we see a source in this course and we are going to talk about how, somebody has a perspective on something, we're going to relate that back to would this person agree or disagree with a civic nation, and that's really important to understand. So this is what a civic nation is, and this is what we are in Canada. It is defined by these three things. It is created by people. Okay, so you need a large group of people. They are typically citizens of a country. It does not matter if they share the same ethnicity. It does not matter if they share the same religion or culture or language. They might not. It's not important to a civic nation. However, the most important part of a civic nation is that people in this area, in this nation state, agree to live according to particular values and beliefs. It is expressed as what we call the rule of law. If you are familiar with the rule of law, you will know that it is an important process in democracy. That means we're all at the same level under the law. So we don't have special preferences for people who are above the law. Now, we have to understand what the rule of law is because it means that no matter who you are, you're going to agree to this special set of principles and values. So all citizens are going to agree to live by the same laws, beliefs, and values of the nation. So if some people do and some people do not, it doesn't matter. It is an overarching belief in your country. So it is just a requirement that people understand that is the way of life and those are the beliefs of this particular nation. So, for example, we all pay taxes in order to fund our government. We all believe in regular elections to make sure that the people in charge are the ones that people have elected and they're accountable. We all believe in things like providing free healthcare. So those are important aspects of our civic nation. Now, some people might never use the healthcare system, but it is an important fundamental belief in our society, and that's what makes a civic nation. Okay, so a civic nation is a place where we are governed by sets of rules that are in some ways explicit, but they also are expressed and implicitly expressed as well. So it's a belief. We believe here that people are equal and everybody should have a chance to succeed and pursue what they want to do. We believe that people should have access to education and healthcare and running water. And those are our beliefs as a nation. Doesn't matter where you're from. These are the beliefs. Okay. So we went back. So it is important that you understand rule of law. So these three characters here, hopefully you recognize them. This is the last one. Okay, so this is Charlie Sheen and Justin Bieber and Steve-O. Do you know him? He's from Jackass. So the idea is that these are celebrities. They have money, they have power, they have a lot of, social clout, but they all got themselves into situations where they were arrested for various dealings. And the idea of rule of law is that you can't go out and break the law and you're not above it. So we're all subjected. Same thing with the prime minister. So if he is caught speeding, he's pulled over. And the idea of rule of law is because it creates a very egalitarian society, a very equal, fair society. And that's really important for a civic nation. So understand what the rule of law is, how that applies. Even the government is actually held accountable in the rule of law. So because the government is created by the people, the government doesn't have the right to go and violate and not follow the people's wishes. That's also part of the rule of law. Okay. So how do we have a say in this? And so what are some of the ways that we as citizens in Canada have our beliefs and values acknowledged? Well, through a few different ways. The main one is our Constitution that has clearly laid out rights. Okay, so you've looked at this document before, of course. Okay, so the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms is the most keystone, fundamental part of what makes us a civic nation. Okay, so it basically, when we talk about the Constitution, it expresses the values and beliefs that Canadians choose to embrace and abide by. It was created, of course, when we came together as a country in 1867. It was revised in 1982 to include things like multiculturalism, and it breaks down how our government's going to rule. So how we become our own nation. What do we believe in? Well, for accountability, we need to have elections every 4 years. We need to make sure that there's certain processes in place to make sure that democracy is enforced and people's opinions are heard. Included in our Constitution is the most important document that forms our beliefs, and that is the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Okay, so underneath the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it outlines all of the civil and political rights that are guaranteed to all Canadians that are very important to our liberties and our rights. So it gives us both rights and freedoms, which are different. One of them talks about the things that you have freedom to no matter what, and some of them are more about just being born into what can you do. So the most important components of the charter are listed here. There's dozens of them. Hopefully you could name a few without even looking. If you go back and you think about the charter, what are some of the things that you can name offhand? So Canadians have the right to leave. Canadians also have the right to come back. We have things specifically related around language, equality. So when we're talking about the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, everyone has these freedoms no matter what. It doesn't work if you only give it to some people. Oh, we are only going to give these rights to people born on January 5th or females or males. No, it has to be a blanket policy. You're in the country, we follow these as well. If people come to visit, they are not obviously a Canadian citizen at the time that they're here, but they are still in an environment that has these rights and freedoms that our society is bought into. Okay. So things like democratic rights, the right to participate in politics and have a democratic structure. This is related to elections. We need to make sure we have that or we don't have democracy. So the freedom of movement within and out of Canada, this has been a contentious issue and a contentious time because these rights have been challenged within the last year and a half because of the pandemic. So when you talk about people referencing the charter, a lot of times they're referencing a lot of these direct references to things like mobility. Well, I can't leave the country and, government says I can't really come back unless I have to stay in this hotel. Those are all components of the charter. The legal rights, so rights of people when dealing with the law. There's things like you have a legal right to unreasonable search and seizure. So the police can't come and, rough you up and ask for a bunch of things if it's unreasonable or they don't have a cause. Like, there are a lot of legal rights. And of course, one of the keystones is innocent until proven guilty, which is very different than guilty until proven innocent, which has happened historically in the United States at times when they were under the threat of things like the Cold War. Equality rights. So you have equal protection under the law, benefit to all of these things without discrimination. And that's one of the keystones. So languages. Generally, you have the right to use either English or French when you're dealing in a federal government institution, like when you're coming through an airport, or you're going to get your passport renewed, or you're going to, I think even when you file your taxes and you call Canadian Revenue Agency, you have the right to speak in French. So when you're talking about federal agencies, language rights are enforced for you. And they're not every language, of course, but it's French and English. So for certain citizens belonging to French or English-speaking minority communities, they have certain rights to be educated in their own language. And Quebec specifically has some different components, and they've had bills and laws passed around protecting the French language. Okay, why is this so important? Because we don't have a definition of ourselves as a nation through other components, because we don't share the same geography, we don't share the same ethnicity or culture or language. We do share a common set of beliefs, and this is it. And this is what makes us a civic nation. Okay. So some of the things maybe to think about: are all rights and freedoms equally important? So we've had some challenges to this, especially recently. Is it more important that language is enforced or mobility? You can or can't leave your country. What happens when these rights or freedoms are upheld or not upheld? So there are situations that we have had in the past that you could even search through news sites, and you could actually look at what are some of Canadians' violation of the charter and what was the outcome. They have been challenged in court, and people have taken these things like mobility rights, language rights, they have taken them to the court, and there has been decisions on them, and it's really interesting to see. So should these rights be a foundation of us as a Canadian nation? If we don't have this shared sense of beliefs or values, what defines us? What makes us a nation? And do you think Canadians as a whole consider this document to be the foundation, whether we recognize it or not? Is this something that is really a foundation for us? And those are really important things to think about as you think about what a civic nation is. So we define ourselves, if we think about the two formations of a nation, we have typically thought of ethnic nations, in which people share an ethnicity, and then they have a government that rules them, and then they form a nation state. We have chosen the other way. We have a shared set of beliefs, and we have this as our kind of defining nation state. So, something to think about, and that's Civic Nation.
If you enjoyed this video, check out our website, online.plrd.ab.ca, and visit us on Facebook, Prairieland Online Academy. You can find out all that's going on with Prairieland Online Academy.